Здравствуйте, товарищи! Today we're gonna talk about politics, and especially about democracy. Democracy is the holy grail of Western culture. It is a symbol of freedom, of development, and all the time democracy is opposed to dictatorship. But what is democracy? Any encyclopedia will tell us that democracy is a political form. It doesn't matter what goes next, because main point of democracy is a form. And of course any political form is built on violence. Violence is a base of any political forms. To understand that, try to imagine what will happen with society if we will remove law enforcement. Will people obey the law if behind that law there is no power of violence? Of course not. The main point of all of this is to show you that as a political form, democracy based on violence. Of course that violence is better regulated in different forms, but still, violence is a part of democracy. But for now we're talking about abstract democracy, it's a logical construction, which never existed actually. But we have some examples of real democracies in our history, human history. Of course, I'm talking about ancient Greece and Roman Republic. They had democracies, but their democracies were built on slavery. For slaves, that democracy was a dictatorship, tyranny. And not only slaves saw democracy as a dictatorship. Women all over the world, and still we have some countries which refuses to give women a political rights. Now it's obvious that democracy and dictatorship can be opposed to each other. Dictatorship is a part of democracy. Or of course you may say that this relation, dictatorship and democracy, is external. But anyway, we can't oppose democracy to dictatorship. It's logically incorrect. But let's get further. Let's take a look into that holy grail. Even an abstract democracy shows us that dictatorship is built in the democratical system. Yes, I'm talking about a golden rule of democracy, a rule of majority. That golden rule is undeniable in democracy. Will of majority is the law. This is how we elect our presidents.
We are at war with Russia. Or perhaps more correctly, we have lost a war with Russia without a battle. We are no longer a sovereign nation. We are no longer a democracy. We are no longer a free people. We are the victims of a bloodless coup. So far, a bloodless coup engineered by Russia with, at best, the traitorous indifference of the Republican Party and Donald John Trump, a man who, to borrow a phrase from another December long ago, will live in infamy. This is a reality that will become the only reality until this country rids itself of Donald John Trump. He is not a president. He is a puppet put in power by Vladimir Putin. And those who ignore these elemental existential facts, Democrats or Republicans, are traitors to this country and will immediately and forever after be held accountable. Resist. Peace.
This is how we pass new laws. So even you are not agree with the law, which was passed by majority, you have to accept that and obey that law, because system have a law enforcement, and if you will break that law, it will use violence to punish you for that. Even here we can see that inside democracy there is a dictatorship. Will of majority is a dictatorship to minority. But of course all of that is just a logical reasoning about abstract idea and how it works. Real historical democracies, besides the abstract ones, doesn't float in vacuum. They exist in a difficult, complicated system of social relationships. And of course these relationships have an impact on democracy. And of course the most developed democracy today is the democracy of United States. United States is the most rich and developed country in the world. Every citizen have a political rights, can vote. So let's take a look on their democracy.
It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else.
Well, this doesn't look good, right? But okay, it was almost 20 years ago. Maybe today's situation is a bit different.
Why is he the leader? I have to explain this to people, how you get to be a leader in Congress. You don't get to be a leader because you're actually a leader. This guy is not a fucking leader. The reason why Hakeem Jeffries is quote unquote the leader is because he's the most corrupted. He's the biggest criminal in the House, and it happens to be a black guy. See, Martin Luther King would be proud that the biggest, most corrupt piece of shit criminal liar in the House is a black guy, and that's how he gets to become the leader of the Democrats, because Wall Street, all the corporations, big pharma, healthcare, fossil fuel companies, oil companies, they know who the biggest corruptible piece of shit is, and they give him the most money, just like they give Chuck Schumer the most money in the Senate, which is why he's the leader, and they also give Mitch McConnell the most money in the Senate, which is why he's their leader, just like McCarthy is the speaker in the House now, not because he's a leader, but because he takes the most money from corporations. And then why does that make them leader, Jimmy? Because they then take that money and they then give it to their colleagues so they can go get reelected, and then they owe them a favor, and that favor is vote for me as leader because I'll give you more money next time because I get the most money from Wall Street. That's how this works. That's why he's the leader. That's why she's the governor.
So it looks like in their democracy money have much more value than a voting right. It looks like a democracy for rich, and not just rich, but extremely rich. All that big pharma, big tech, Wall Street, military industrial complex, it's a giant amount of money. We can imagine how much money is floating there. And of course, that amount of money have a giant impact on whole political system. And democracy is vulnerable for it. And it looks like democracy is not a freedom anymore, for Americans at least. It looks like democracy is a dictatorship of extremely rich people over everyone else. And from that example, we can obviously see that political form is secondary to economical system. Let's stop here for today. Until next time, до свидания.